Hi, I started about a minute early just to allow people to show up. So we're going to get started in just a couple of seconds, maybe at around like 1 or 101 or something. Okay, I'm going to give it another 30 seconds just because I'm missing a couple people and then we'll get going. Oh, hi, Cindy. Hi, everybody that's here so far. Um, okay, you know what? I think I've waited enough. We've got some people here. I am recording this, so if anybody needs to leave early or if anyone comes a little bit late, they're still going to be able to view the full recording later on today whenever they receive the email. So let's just dive right into it. So, hi, everybody. My name is Sophie, and I'm part of the customer success team based in Toronto. Thank you for taking the time to join us for today's introductory webinar, which is part of our October Workflows series. So today, our introductory webinar is going to have a particular focus on optimizing the platform for CRM users. So we'll be talking about publishing trips from Tramada and Travel Contact, and then enhancing them in the trip publisher. While we'll still be going over all of the main Umapped features, so you're not going to miss out on just a general intro to Umapped as well, our focus today will be on the best features for CRM users. So during today's webinar, you will learn how Umapped is helping leading global brands and travel advisors engage with their customers throughout their entire travel journey. By using our collaborative experience platform, you can deliver interactive, branded, and consolidated mobile proposals and itineraries with relevant content and messaging for your clients. You'll also see how the platform maximizes productivity and streamlines your business workflow. During today's 35-minute webinar, we're going to start with an overview of the platform and then the client experience. So we're going to take a look at how your clients will receive and view their trips online via the mobile app and as a PDF. Next, we'll actually demo UMAP's online trip building platform for travel professionals, which is called the Trip Publisher. And then we'll finish today's webinar with a review of the training resources and the support that's available to you, making sure to save some time for a live Q&A. So if you have any questions that you think would be helpful to have a live demonstration while I answer, that would be your time. So before we do get started, I do want to make sure that everybody has access to a complimentary trial. If you haven't already signed up for a trial, you can visit umapp.com/trial, or just go to our main page, umapp.com, and then click on the sign up button located at the top right corner of the page and complete the trial form. After submitting your request, our customer success team will send you a confirmation email with your account credentials and login instructions. So let's begin our live demo by showing you a little bit about how to push a trip to UMAP from something like Travel Contact or Tramada and what that will look like. So I actually have a little handy sheet right here. I'm just going to share this for my full screen that kind of outlines all of the different technical elements of these CRMs. We talked about client base in an earlier workflows, but I'll also quickly go over this for anybody that uses client base. So let's just go very quickly over the specifics for client base before we get into Travel Contact and Tramada. So with client base, it is a sync of your res card data. So this is an actual live integration between client base and the trip publisher. There is a one-time agency setup that is required. So that means that in order for individual agents within your agency to access the integration, you'll need to have the entire agency set up at the very beginning. And then once you have that setup complete, you can go into the booking inbox to retrieve your res card data. And your res card data will be synced to daily at around a few different times throughout the day at 3-hour intervals. They are set times. So anytime you make an update to a res card in client base at the set sync time in the trip publisher, it will update within there. And you can also use the other aspect of the client base integration, which is the Live Connect component, to pull trips and segments from the trip publisher back into client base. So this is actually a two-way integration. So you can both push your bookings from client base to the trip publisher, as well as pull bookings from the trip publisher into client base. Now, because I'm not going to get too into client base today, because I did that in an earlier session, if you have any questions about client base, I would first recommend going to our support portal just to read up about it. And if not, you can also ask us any questions at support@umapped.com. Through Travel Contact and Tramada, so if you've already worked with these two companies in the past, you do have access to a free Umapped trial. So you can either reach out through one of these integrated systems or reach out to us at Umapped to begin the integration process. For Travel Contact, this is a one-time user setup. So while we'll initially do the agency setup at your company level, each individual user will need to at least reach out to their manager to get in touch with us or Travel Contact, or just get in touch with us directly in order to get themselves set up. So just to make a little distinction here, for client base, once the agency is set up, everybody has access to it automatically. But with client base, you'll just need to let us know that you need to be set up as well. So even if your company is already set up, each agent has to get in touch and let us know that they'd like to be set up. And for this integration, what you need to do is you get to push your trip data from Travel Contact to the trip publisher, and it will automatically create a trip and publish the trip within the trip publisher. So I can actually show you what that looks like because I have a Travel Contact account. So for anybody with a Travel Contact account, you'll be familiar with this screen here. This is where I am for my trip. And then within my trip, in Travel Contact, I'm just going to give this a minute to load. Let me just refresh that. One second, I'm just going to see if this is loading properly. Travel Contact trip. And then within itinerary, you'll see a button that says Umapped on it once the integration is complete. And you can, by clicking on either Umapped directly or Show in Umapped, you will create the web view of the trip. So because the web view has been created, let me just log into this. One second. Gmail. So since the web view has been created, this means that automatically within your account, the trip's already been published. The any clients that were attached to this as travelers will automatically be added as travelers. And you can see here that some of my segments automatically matched with some vendors in my vendor database. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So some photos were added. This one has some address information and contact information because it matched with the vendor in my vendor database, etc. So if I go into my trip publisher account, you can see that here is my sample Travel Contact trip. It's already in published status because, like I mentioned, when you push a trip from Travel Contact to Umapped, it will auto-publish. And there's also a traveler that's been attached to it because that traveler was someone I listed as a traveler in Travel Contact. All right, so let's go back to this screen. All right. For Tramada, again, this is a direct integration with your Tramada account. And for this integration, you only require a one-time agency setup. For the setup, there is a fee on the Travel Contact side, on the Tramada side, so you will need to get in touch with Tramada initially in order to begin this process. But very similar to Travel Contact, in this integration, you just need to push your trip data from Tramada to the trip publisher. And then within the trip publisher, which I'll just go to, you'll see your trip pushed from Tramada like this. So it'll say something along the lines of itinerary and costing full, or whatever the status is. Unlike with travel contact, there isn't going to be an auto image selected, so you won't see a cover photo. So we're going to talk about later on about how to add a photo to this. And you'll see that this trip is also in published status because this trip automatically publishes when you push it from Tramada to Umapped. Unlike with travel contact, for Tramada, I don't have an account to show you. So if you have any questions about it, I recommend going to our support portal and clicking on Tramada Setup and User Guide, because by clicking on one of the links where it says click here, you can watch a video on exactly what buttons to click to push a trip from Tramada to Umapped. So within the support article, there's not only some instructions on how to find your trips later on, but also how it works on the Tramada end. Okay, so now we're just going to close these. And now that you can see how to send your trips from Travel Contact to Tramada to Umapped and kind of what it looks like when we receive the trip, I'm going to show you around the trip publisher itself, which is Umapped's trip building application for travel professionals. So this is where you would come to build and edit proposals and itineraries. So to log in, you'd come to pub-trip.umapped.com, and remember to bookmark this link for future visits. So I'm just going to put my credentials in and log in. And once you're logged in, you're going to be initially taken to your dashboard. On the top right, where this little silhouette is where your account details will be displayed. So if you click on your user details, a drop-down will appear and display My Account, Submit Feedback, Send Us an Email, and Log Out. For any new users, I suggest selecting My Account to update your user profile information, as these are all of the details which are displayed in the client experience. And this is also where you can come to change your password. Within My Account, you also have the option not only to edit your user profile, but also your preferences and how to view and edit your plan. So if you click on Preferences, this is where you can update any account preferences like flight notifications and traveler messaging that we'll talk about in a little bit. And within Plans, you can view and edit any billing details, download invoice, update a credit card if you have a credit card stored, and etc. On your dashboard, which you can return to by clicking on Back to Trips, you can view all of the trips that you have pushed or created within this default tab, My Trips. Your dashboard is also where you can search and access any past trips or future trips or anything like that by using some of our filters. Depending on your plan type, you may also be able to view all of the trips that have been created by your company by clicking on Company Trips. Selecting the filters icon just to the right of the search bar gives you the option to filter through active trips or past trips. You could filter by the status, so whether it's pending or published, and the creation date, so when exactly the trip was created, whether a week ago or a month ago or something like that. Clicking on the menu icon will reveal some other tabs, such as the Library and Admins tab, since by default you're going to be in your trips. From within the library, the templates, documents, vendors, and tags tabs are covered in some of our more advanced webinars and allow you to save profiles for various suppliers, as well as content for guides and other templated notes. And then lastly, I'd also like to highlight the support portal. So by clicking on Support from the menu icon, you can gain access to our online knowledge portal, where you can also send questions to our customer success team. So this is where I would highly recommend you go if you ever have questions about getting set up with Travel Contact or Tramada or any of the different other integrations we have. Before we go into our trip and look at how to optimize trips, I just want to quickly go over the function of documents in the library and vendors, as these can go a long way to enhancing your already created trips from Tramada or Travel Contact. So your library, so documents right here within your library, is where you can create, save, and store content. So when we say content, this could include destination information, important travel information or documentation, or company documentation, etc. Essentially, any information you need to include in your client's trips. You can kind of think of this as your database of information or content that you can pull from to add to your trips. So when you create or add content to your library, you are creating documents. And then each document is made up of individual pages. So this About Toronto is my overarching document, and these are each individual pages within it. So this structure helps you keep your content organized. When you're adding content from your documents into your trip, you can choose to include an entire document or just one or more individual pages. And this again gives you the flexibility to personalize and customize the information you present to each client, rather than assuming that they will all interact with your documents the exact same way. Essentially, anything that you can think to create can be added as a document or a page in your library. And it means that you don't have to be on your desktop or your laptop in order to access any important information, since it will be stored in your account. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how to create documents and pages today, as we have some more advanced webinars that you can watch to learn more about the how. But today I just wanted to make a case for the why and then show you later on how to add these documents and pages to your trip. And finally, with vendors. So within our vendor database, and just to get the definition out of the way, vendors is kind of the catch-all term we use for anything that you can make a segment from. So if you have a hotel, that particular hotel would be considered a vendor, or a particular cruise ship would be considered a vendor. Or if there's a transportation company that you book with, that could be added as a vendor. Now, we already have a good list of vendors preloaded in your account from day one. That includes all of the major hotel chains and cruise lines. So for instance, if I look up the Four Seasons, you can see that there's already going to be a myriad of Four Seasons vendor profiles created. So the Beverly Wilshire, however that's pronounced, the Four Seasons in Delaware, the Four Seasons in Toronto, etc. These are already going to be stored in your vendor database with photos, which we pull from either Travel Tech or the Virtuoso feed, as well as address information and contact information. So there already are going to be a number of vendors stored in your database, but anything that you want to create in your database, you can also do. So if there's a more boutique hotel that isn't part of the vendor database because maybe it's a little bit newer, or if you want to save an activity which isn't going to be part of our vendor database, you can always create your own. And that way, when you've created your own and added contact information or address information or photos, those profiles will then be saved, such as maybe this one that I made a couple of days ago. So the Hotel Luneta was not part of the vendor database, but I created it on my own and added all of this contact info. So if I ever go to add this to a trip in the future, or if I'm pushing a trip from Tramada or Travel Contact with this name, it will match to this vendor profile and then include all of this info. And that's what happened in the example I showed you earlier. But we're going to go over that in just a sec. All right. So now we're going to go into, let me just go back into my other account with those other two trips. And we're going to look at how to optimize some of the bookings that we received from either Travel Contact or Tramada, so that you know how to enhance the trip once you've received it. So the very first thing I want to talk about with itinerary full and costing, the trip that we pushed from Tramada to Travel Contact, is how to add a cover photo, since these don't come with cover photos. So I'm just going to click into the trip by clicking on the name. And then we're initially going to click on the gray banner at the very top of the trip. So I'm just going to click anywhere on this banner. And now there are 3 different ways to add a photo. So you can either add from the photo library. So this is either your Umapped database if you've added photos before, or the Wikimedia library. You can search the web if you have a particular website you like pulling photos from. For instance, I use Unsplash a lot, or you can always upload a photo. So for this one in particular, I'm just gonna pull a photo from unsplash.com. So let's do Australia because this was a trip to Australia. And we're gonna search. And then we'll just pick whatever photo I'd like best and upload that photo. And you can always change this later on, don't worry, just click anywhere on the banner and you'll get those 3 options again so you can choose a new photo if you don't like the one you selected. Other than that, if all of the bookings that I received from Tramada are good to go, then you don't have to worry about modifying any of these because you can just go ahead and add your travelers like this. So I'm just going to click on Add Traveler and then add my traveler's details and then add them. Or if you want to add any destination information, you could do that by coming to destination content. But we're going to talk about how to do all those things later. But if you want to modify any of the bookings or add to any of the bookings that you pushed from Tramada, maybe to add some additional details, or if you wanted to add some photos, save something as a vendor, all you need to do is click on View Details on whatever the segment is, and then add your pertinent details, or click the camera icon to save this as a vendor. So if I know I'm going to use the Alamo rent-a-car service in the future, I'll just add this. I can add some address info if I'd like, or any contact info. I'm not going to do that right now because I just want to save it. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this. And then by clicking on the camera icon again, I can add photos or edit the vendor profile to add the address info that I didn't add before, or maybe add some new contact information that I didn't previously have. So there's quite a lot that you can do from this screen to further enhance and modify one of your trips. And the same goes for travel contact. So we're going to go into travel contact. If I don't like the photo that came across when I initially pushed this photo, this trip from travel contact to Umapped, I can always change the photo just by clicking on the banner and picking a new photo. So let's do Rome, look up Unsplash. Maybe I would prefer something like this one, upload. There we go. You can add your destination content from the side if all of the bookings were good. If you need to add a note or something, you can always manually add one by clicking on the add icon. But any of these different segments you can continue to modify just by clicking on View Details and then adding your information to these categories on the side. Okay, so even though we have looked at how to enhance trips that have been pushed to Umapped, I'm also just going to go over the steps for how to create a new trip in the trip publisher. So I'm just going to go to my other account, Travel Advisor. Okay, so to do so, you would start by clicking on the plus new button at the top right of your dashboard to start the trip building process. Enter a name for your trip, as well as the travel start and end dates. So I'm going to have this to October of 2021. October that to that. And you also have the option to add trip tags, which is a great way to apply labels to your trips so that you can easily search for them later on your dashboard. And then you can create a new trip just by clicking on the Create Trip button at the bottom right corner. And then we'll just create my trip. Okay, I'm just going to quickly go back to my travel contact trip. And we're going to go over everything that is contained in the left-hand side as well as the right-hand side so we can see how you would go about adding bookings to a new trip or modifying an existing trip. Okay, so in today's demo, I'm going to highlight how you can enhance the trips that you've already pushed from one of the integrated CRMs. And then we'll also demo how to create your own trip segments, and then finally how to share or send a trips to your traveler. So I'm going to start on this left-hand side. And initially, we're just going to skip over travelers because we're going to come to this towards the end. So we're going to go straight to import bookings. So import bookings is where you can access the different system integrations available to you. So this is where you can import your GDS PNRs, any client-based res cards. So if I have a res card, I can put in the res card number and then pull up if anything is associated with that. And this is where I can also access any booking confirmation emails that I might have forwarded into the trip publisher. You can also import from Sabre Tripcase, Travelport, and WorldSpan just by coming to the second tab, PNR Import, and then putting in the PNR, the lead passenger last name, and choosing the GDS. If you ever need to go back to your main page at any point during the trip building process, by the way, just select Trip at the top of the left-hand navigation menu. After that, we have Import Template. I'm not going to get too into this today, but it's kind of what it just says on the tin. If you have a template that you've already created, you can import it into a trip just to add some more bookings or content. After that, we have suppliers, and this is where you can import bookings or content from a list of partnered tour operators or DMCs. So if you work with classifications or if you made a booking with GoGo Vacations, this is where you could come to import from any of these different suppliers or DMCs or tour operators. For destination content, we're already partnered with AFAR and W Cities, giving you access to curated guides and recommendations for over 500 destinations around the world. For AFAR, you can either add destination guides or specific recommendations. Select from the list of trip destinations or click Search by City Name to manually enter a city. So I'll look up London and click Search. From here, add it to your trip and then select a date. I prefer to always add these larger destination guides towards the end of my trip, so I'm going to choose the 13th of October and then add that to my trip. For W Cities, select a destination and content type from the source drop-down menu, and then click on Search. Then select the checkbox to the right of whatever you'd like to include in your trip, and click on Add to Trip, and just choose a date and confirm that date. If you want to add a page from one of the documents like I talked about earlier, all you need to do is come to Add from Library, and in the keyword field right here, put in the keyword title of whatever page you'd like to include. So if you just want to include a couple of pages from your document rather than the whole thing, this is how you'd go ahead and do that. So pages are added in a different area than full documents, which we're going to get to in just a second, because of the fact that they're being added to the main body of the itinerary rather than being added as a supporting document to be accessed from a separate tab. So from this section, you would just click on the last option in this list, Add from Library, and then look up your page with the keyword. I'm just going to make sure that I actually have a good document to use from this account. Second, library, documents. So for instance, we have one called example. So I'll come back here and my page is called example. So I'm just going to look that up. And then to add this page from my document to my trip, all I need to do is click on copy. And it's going to automatically be added to the very top of my trip. You'll see it says example up here. That's the page that I just added. But I always have the option to reorganize my page by clicking on View Details and then selecting the calendar icon. This will allow you to choose a new date on which to place this page. So we can actually add it to the end if we want, or whenever. There are several different ways to add PDF, Word, or documents, library documents to a trip. The first is by selecting documents from the left-hand side. Select File Attachments, and then click the Attach File button. So I'm going to add a sample e-ticket from my desktop, and then attach file. And if you need to preview or remove your document, click on the ellipses for more options. And like we discussed earlier, you can create, store, and manage your own content within your library. So if you want to include your entire document into a trip, which will include all of the pages that you have added to that document, you can do so by navigating to Content from Library, the first tab within Documents, and then click on Add Document. So for instance, we're going to add the entire example document to my trip by clicking on the checkbox and then clicking on Add Document. And then again, by clicking on the options icon, I can preview or remove my entire document. Click on Calendar for a calendar view of a trip. And then last, you can click on Settings to view and edit trip details. So selecting the ellipses to the right of the trip name and dates will allow you to duplicate the trip, create a new template from your trip, or if you have no travelers on a trip, you'll be able to delete the trip as well. And then the audit log, which is the second tab just to the right of trip details, is where you can view a history of actions for a particular trip. All right, so let's head back to the main page. And now let's go a little into how to manually create your own trip segments. So in the bottom right of the trip, you can click the add icon to create your own segments, add cruise content, and trip notes. Like I mentioned, we already have thousands of vendor profiles within the trip publisher for accommodations and cruises that include photos, addresses, and contact information. So for instance, if I wanted to add a hotel that I didn't create within Travel Contact, I could click on accommodation, and then I'll search for my hotel. So I'm going to add the Rome Cavalieri Waldorf Astoria from the 7th of October to the 13th. This hotel, as you can see, already has a vendor profile created that includes information about the hotel, as well as photos of the property. So I simply need to add my check-in and check-out dates and times, and then click Add to Trip. And then this is also how you can update any of the hotels that you've imported from Travel Contact or Tramada to include photos and information. So by clicking on, so let's pick a new one. Let's say the W Barcelona. Let's say that this hadn't come across with the appropriate photos because maybe it didn't match to the vendor profile within the database and it just came across blank. You could click on View Details, select the pencil icon in the top right corner, and then up here in the hotel name, just search for the hotel name in the database. So if I write in W Barcelona, I'm going to get W Barcelona, which is a result that's already saved in our vendor database. So by clicking on this, whatever was in that vendor profile will automatically match. So let's say if this is supposed to be the Four Seasons, I can look up Four Seasons Toronto, click on the suggestion that I'm getting from the database, and then whatever's in that profile will automatically match. So in this case, it's all of these photos, as well as the address information. So let's go back to W Barcelona, match it again, and then all of the right photos will come across. So this is how you can modify something that didn't come across with the correct photos. Just come up here and edit the name, just search for that hotel in the database, and then update. And then if not, like we've talked about before, you can always click on the camera icon to save it to your personal vendors and then add your own photos. You can also add a trip note. So this feature allows you to add your own customized notes for your clients that can include detailed links, photos, and embedded videos. So for our sample today, I will add a bon voyage message for my clients. So select Note and then add a title. So I'll say a before you go checklist. The dates and times are entirely optional depending on the kind of note that you're adding. And then just add your details. So you could say, here are some pre-trip reminders. And then I'll add my reminders later on. And then you can always select hide note if you want to make the note internal for you or somebody that you're collaborating on the trip with, as these kinds of private notes are only visible in the trip publisher. And then I'll just add it to my trip. And of course, these are all of those interactive elements that I spoke about, such as adding a link if you want to attach it to a personal website, or if you want to add a video, if you have something you'd like to show, any photos you can always add to a note, or you can always add a file like a brochure or a voucher or something like that. Now, because I did push this trip from Travel Contact, it already is a published trip, so I don't need to publish it. But if I make any significant changes, I can always republish the trip just to make sure that those modifications are going to be received by my travelers. So you don't have to worry about the publishing. For any new trips, you will need to click on the publish button in the top right corner before your travelers will be able to access your trip. But in this case, I'm already good to go. And this trip is dynamic. So again, you always have the option to make edits or changes at any point. And if you make any significant updates, just remember to republish the trip so that those changes will be reflected on your client's view. You'll also notice a few icons just to the right of the trip name and date. You can click on the share icon, which is the first one, to add collaborators and your travelers' emails. You can invite a collaborator or a traveler by selecting the share icon, although of course you can also just add a traveler by clicking on the left-hand side. But the only difference is the button on the left-hand side is helpful if you happen to be in another place, such as in my documents, and I wanted to go straight to my travelers. In regards to collaborators, the collaborator feature allows you to share your trip with other travel professionals like suppliers, DMCs, vendors, and tour operators. So in this case, we're just going to go with travelers. So we can select travelers from the share icon or from the left. Either one will do the same thing. And this will bring me to my traveler page. Of course, there's already going to be a traveler here because this was the traveler that was in Travel Contact, but I can always make any modifications that I want by clicking on the three dots, the option icon. If I need to remove this traveler or preview the email that they received, or if I want to click on the trip email log to see whether or not they've received the email. And then I can add any other travelers that I'd like. So I'll add myself. You can see that because I frequently add this traveler email, the first name and the last name that I typically use are already auto-populated. And then I'll just add this traveler. And then once you've added your traveler, your clients will receive a personalized branded email with all of the information they need to access their trip, which we're going to show in just a few minutes. If I go back to trip, right after the share icon, the preview icon located to the right will allow you to access the web view as well as the two PDFs. And you can also click on the pencil icon to edit your trip name if you don't like the trip name that came from Travel Contact, change the dates if you need to, and then add any trip tags or modify any trip tags. This tag is here because this is the tag that associates it with the trip and travel context, so don't worry too much about them. These aren't even visible to clients anyway, so whatever you put here is only for internal use. So I can like put Rome if I want, or London, and then update that. Okay, so now that we've published the trip and we've sent it off to a client, we want to see actually what our clients are going to see. So when ready, your client's trips are initially delivered by email, and then they're available in 3 different formats. Clients can access their trips online, as a PDF, and via the Umapped mobile app. All formats of the trip are branded for you and include your company logo and contact details. So this is an example of the email that your clients will receive, giving them access to their trip. They can click on the View Your Trip button in order to access the web view of their trip, as well as the trip PDF, or click on the App Store or Google Play Store icons to download the Umapped mobile app. And of course, your branding is also always going to appear in the same line of sight. So let's start by taking a look at the web view. This View Your Trip button opens a dynamic trip link that can be bookmarked and then accessed at any time. So I'll just input my traveler's email and log in. And then the first thing your clients will see in their day-by-day itinerary is your branding right at the top. So your branding and contact information is always displayed front and center. There's also a download button for the trip PDF, of which we have two different versions: a full PDF or the print-friendly option, which just doesn't have any images. So I'll download the PDF and then come back to this in a few moments. Your clients can view their day-by-day trip details and any important information that you have included in their trip just by scrolling down. The amount of details or information in the trip is always up to you based on your clients and the type of trip. Of course, all of the photos that are displayed here have been added from one of the many image libraries in the trip publisher. So this is how your clients can scroll through all of those photos. And you can also notice this little chat icon, which displays on trip segments. This is the messenger feature. When enabled, it allows for real-time chat and notifications, which your clients can access on the web and the mobile app trip views. When clients chat with you using the messenger, you will receive an email notification, and you can even reply directly from your email. You can also access chat messages from the trip publisher itself, and your reply will display into the chat window, much like this one. And on flight segments, this is also where your clients will receive any day of flight notifications. You'll notice the blue plus button, this little add icon located at the bottom right corner of the page. This is the traveler collaboration feature that is available for both the web view as well as the mobile app. And this allows your clients to build and personalize their trip details with information including dinner reservations, trip notes, or any other activities that they have booked on their own. So while they cannot edit or delete any of the segments that you have added, it allows your clients to consolidate all information in one place with one consolidated view of their trip. And then at the top of the trip, you'll have a couple other tabs. The Documents tab is where any supporting documentation for the trip is available. So this is those full documents that I've added to my trip. And this includes all of the pages contained within my document. And this also will include any attachments of PDFs or Word documents that I may have added to my trip. Beside that, the trip map will pinpoint all of the destinations that your clients are traveling to. And there is also a calendar that your clients can access to view all of their trip details in a calendar view, with the option to sync to a personal Google Calendar, iCal, or Outlook calendar. The web view itself is mobile responsive and will resize to fit to whatever device your client is using. So they can still access this from a laptop, a tablet, or a phone. For any clients that are a little less tech savvy, the PDF offers a printable option for your customers who still prefer paper. And there are 4 different design templates that you can select from in your preferences in the trip publisher. And then lastly, let me just share my full screen. We also have the mobile app. And your clients have the option to download the Umapped mobile app from either the App Store or the Google Play Store, so that they can view their trips on their smartphones while they're on the go or in destination. So you'll see I have a couple already up here. One of the great benefits of the mobile app is that trip details are available even when your client's phone is offline, so meaning no Wi-Fi and no network connection. And additionally, within hotels and flights, they can access directions as well as live weather reporting. And again, at the top of the trip, you'll notice any of your branding is always going to be displayed at the very top right up here, as well as any social media links that you've included. All right. And then obviously the only difference between the two is that you can access any of your trips in the mobile app without Wi-Fi or data once you've downloaded them. And you'll also notice that there was no calendar option uh, in the mobile app. And that's because if I go into a trip that's already started, it'll automatically scroll to the nearest date. And so it kind of has an embedded calendar within it. Okay, so now we're just going to go back to here. Okay, so we have reviewed various versions of the client experience from the web to the PDF and mobile versions, highlighting some benefits and features for the clients, as well as how to build a trip in the new trip publisher experience, reviewing some popular integrations for our trip building process like travel contact, Tramada, suppliers, as well as destination and cruise content, and vendor profiles. So you should now be familiar with how to create and enhance a trip, but we also have some tools that will help you along the way. So our support portal, which you can access either by clicking on support in the trip publisher or just by coming to pub-support.umapped.com, is where you can access a getting started guide, as well as step-by-step instructions for the different features and integrations that we covered today. So if you ever have questions about Tramada setups or travel contact or any of the different integrations, travel contact right there, this is where you would come to look up anything that you'd have questions about or directly send us an email. And on our website, we also encourage you to sign up for any of our live one-on-one meetings if you have specific questions that can't be answered from the support portal, or sign up for any of our more advanced webinars coming up in the future. And if you have anything you'd like to see in the future, just send us an email with your suggestions at support@umapped.com. I'll also be sharing a recording of today's webinar so that you can review this again on your own time. But I'd like to spend a little time now, if anybody has any questions, just going over those questions. And if not, we'll end today's webinar since we're at the 45-minute mark. And I'll email you within the next couple of hours. So I'm just going to wait for any questions. Okay, if there are no questions, I think I'm going to end the webinar now. So thanks everybody for joining again and have a great rest of your day. Take care and bye.